The story begins with a man in a yellow shirt breathing very heavily and dead bodies lying all around him. With all his might, he tries to regain his breath. Only one man was standing on his own feet and was picking something up in his palm. And the gangster in the yellow shirt was very surprised. There were at least 10 dead bodies in one room. In his hand, the man was holding 2 black balls of some kind. The heart of the gangster in the yellow shirt was beating at an incredible speed. He could not believe his eyes as the man in question must be dead. And his death he confirmed with his own hands. But no matter how much the man screamed, he stood there and just stayed quiet. But then he decided to answer that in fact he was dead. Gangster was very puzzled by these words and didn't understand what was going on. Then the man in the jacket suddenly turned his head toward the gangster. And at that moment he froze like a stone. "Don't you remember?" the man in the suit asked. And his face made the gangster start to shudder. Showing his glowing eye, the man said that a year ago it was he who plucked out his eye. The gangster knew he had no chance, so he started to crawl back. But it was too late. As soon as the man approached, he started screaming. And the screaming from the building was heard all the way down the street. Small prison yard. The warden was pacing through the prison. He walked up to one of the cells and called the number 1503. There were a lot of inmates in the cell who were playing games. And one of them was sleeping with a blanket over him. Hurried to his room, he quickly got up and went to the door. It was a large and very stern man with a beard. As he walked down the hall, everyone started clapping for him. Even those who were asleep woke up and started clapping, too. They clapped for him until he got to the visiting room. His gaze was stern and his neck was the size of his head. He went into the room, and the guard closed the door behind him. In front of him he saw 3 men who were dressed in formal clothes. One of them was twisting 2 black balls in his hand. And it horrified the big guy a little. They obviously knew each other, as the guy in the red tie called him a grizzly bear. Choi's real name. He waited patiently for them to tell him why they were here. Sitting down in a chair, he asked how it was that they found time for him if they didn't even have time to go to the bathroom properly. The man with the red tie's name was Park Tae-san, and he was the boss of the clan. Choi wondered why even the boss came here. They came to warn him that Cheons needed to leave quickly. "It sounds like you're getting out of the game," Choi said grudgingly. "That's exactly what it is," Chonsu replied affirmatively. "They gave their word that they would find my stepsister, so I can't wait any longer," said Chonsu. "Bullshit," said Choi and spat sideways. Choi started yelling loudly that no one could just ever leave this game. With a sigh, Ji Keel-san adjusted his glasses. He was the inside boss. All Tae-san did was change the marbles in his hand. And Chonsu decided to remain silent, closing his eyes. Choi was very surprised to see their reaction. After all, this was certainly not what he had expected. He clenched his teeth tightly in frustration. "I thought about why they came, probably just to piss me off," said an angry Choi. Chonsu called out to Choi as he was leaving. Chonsu said he would miss him. But Choi was only silent in response. And as soon as he took his time he left the room. He slammed the door behind him very loudly. "Capricious," Tae-san said with a sigh. Looking at his watch, Seolson says they have to get through if they want to catch the plane. They drove along a road where there were quite a few cars. Keel-san stops to say one last goodbye. Then he grabbed his bag and walked forward. The variable marbles, Tae-san warned him not to come back. Chonsu looked intently at Tae-san. "This will not end well for you," Tae-san warned. Chonsu was a little surprised by these words. As soon as they said goodbye, they left the airport at once. Keel-san asks Tae-san if he would like to have a little drink, and the latter agrees. "To Gangnam, gentlemen?" asks the driver of their car. "No," Tae-san answers sharply. "At the moment we are heading for Gimpo." Noisy noises come from the construction site. A crane is carrying large concrete slabs. Shuffling the balls in his hand, Tae-san observes the process. Korean Las Vegas, Keel-san says cheerfully. With the airport so close, it's an Asian city of delight. Keel-san hands one glass to Tae-san. And Tae-san drank it in a gulp. And then said with a serious look that their plans were just beginning. Shaking the bottle of wine, Keel-san rejoiced at these words. Looking at the sky, Tae-san, what are you thinking about? He began to recall one of the fights in which he had participated. He had bravely fought a whole crowd of men at that time. And in the end he and his friends were able to defeat them all. And in doing so, he stayed on his feet. Afterward, he thanked his two comrades for their help. The plane in which Chonsu is flying. Looking out the window of the plane, he was also thinking hard about something. And his thoughts were also of those glorious times. The time when they alone could fight a whole crowd. When they helped each other standing shoulder to shoulder. And those were the same memories Choi had. At one point, Tae-san squeezed the balls tightly. And bravely began to pose, looking only forward. Just watch what happens, said Tae-san. Soon we will swallow all of Asia whole. And Keel-san believed Tae-san's words. One of Korea's beautiful cities. A very expensive house of one of the bosses with the lights on inside. Or more likely, Tae-san got so drunk that he can't walk properly now. Keel-san tells him that they have come to his house. Tae-san perks up and jokingly taps Keel-san on the shoulder. Is everything going to be all right? Keel-san asked while Tae-san took off his jacket. Should I leave a couple of people outside? Worriedly his friend continued. But Tae-san only laughed when he heard these words. You think anyone would dare sneak into my house at Park Tae-san's? Smiling said Tae-san. And I'll call you in the morning, said Keel-san as he left. Tae-san immediately collapsed on the couch to sleep without even undressing. Pulling back his tie, he realizes that he has really had too much to drink today. Keel-san is already out and heading to his car where a security guard is waiting for him. But someone has been watching for Keel-san to leave. It was two twin brothers and they had a tattoo of crossed axes around their necks. And also identical gold chains. They were aiming at Tae-san's beautiful house. At this time Tae-san was already completely asleep and dreaming. Near Tae-san's apartment was a little way down the stairs. It was there that the two twin brothers hid. They were arguing with each other over how they could never get things done right. One of the brothers noticed an oddity about the house not being guarded by anyone. Quietly on their knees instead of sneaking onto the property successfully. What kind of place are you looking for? Said someone from the darkness. One of the brothers started yelling at the other because he didn't even know where they were going. It wasn't me, replied the brother in the leopard t-shirt. It was me, replied the drunken Tae-san sitting on the street. When the brothers saw Tae-san, they were immediately frightened and jumped back a little. Tae-san exhaled heavily as he was still too drunk. At the same second, the two brothers jumped on Tae-san with the words grab him. Grabbing him, they didn't understand what kind of man he was, probably a robber. One of the brothers began to shout at Tae-san saying that he does not understand where exactly he sneaked in. But Tae-san calmly replied that he had nothing to rob in his house. I am the head of the Shinmyeong clan, Park Tae-san, Tae-san said proudly. This gave the twin brothers a shock. At the same second, they synchronously knelt down and began bowing. We are the twin axes Na Jianjo and Na Sunjo, and we come in peace, the brothers shouted as they introduced themselves. If you have not come to rob me, then what have you come to rob me for? Asked Tae-san with a chuckle. The brothers looked at each other and considered what to answer. We have come to try to strike at least one blow to Korea's legendary fist, Jianjo said. We know this is no ordinary offer, but please accept it, Jianjo continued bowing. Well then, Theo-san said with a sigh. I heard the news how two thugs were thrown out of a nightclub who fought 15 people. The brothers began to cry saying that they would have won if they had struck first. All right, you can get up off your knees, Tae-san said smiling. Putting on their gloves, the brothers began to prepare to fight the best fist in Korea, and they were serious. Tae-san laughed a little when he saw their serious attitude. I will make you my bodyguards if you hit me at least once, Tae-san said. At first the brothers were a little shocked by such a statement. We take it as a promise, Sunjil said, tuning up for the fight. Come on, attack, said Tae-san and made a hand gesture. The brothers began to attack Tae-san in sync. They struck blow after blow, never giving them a moment's rest. But Tae-san dodged every one of their attacks, no matter how they attacked him. And even if it was a lightning strike with his foot. But one of the brothers almost managed to get him. Tae-san realized that these two were pretty strong opponents. No turning back, boss, Jeonjul said before striking. But he ended up getting punched in the face himself. So did his brother. Together, they fell to the ground, and never landed a single blow. Someone opened his eyes, his gaze directed to the ceiling. Jeonjul's brother was the first to wake up. He stood up abruptly, not realizing where he was now. Felt a sharp pain. He took hold of his left eye with his hand. And turned around and saw that his brother was still asleep. And thought he should be woken up. Instead of calling out to him, or shaking him lightly, he kicked him in the face. From such a blow Sunjil immediately woke up and began to scream. Not realizing what was going on, he started kicking the couch with his feet. And hit the corner. What a retard you are. Jeonjul said disrespectfully. You're finally awake, came a voice from the second floor. Tae-san, in his bathrobe, came down the stairs. On the table there was a fruit cutlet and expensive wine. The brothers said that they just wanted to test themselves. Laughing, Tae-san said he liked people like that. And he took a glass of wine in his hand. We didn't think it would happen like this, Jeonjul said uncertainly. But still, Tae-san said menacingly, and placed the glass of wine on the table. Your chance as it came and went. Now go back home and train better. But you're a gangster who's got everybody's respect. And we want to become with the likes of you, said Jeonjul. Do I look like a gangster? Asked Tae-san. There are no more gangsters nowadays, only profligate men, and that is what I am, said Tae-san proudly. But the brothers didn't care, and they asked to be taken under their wing. But Tae-san only smiled as he sipped his wine and looked at them. And no one ever tasted any of the fruit. Unfortunately, I am leaving the game this very day. Tae-san said distinctly. The brothers were shocked and could not believe their ears. At the same second, they both started crying loudly. You two made me sober up, finish it, Tae-san shouted grudgingly. Now stop it, and fix the mood with a glass of wine, came Tae-san's voice from inside the house. On this beautiful night, the moon was shining very brightly. The moon beautifully illuminated the rooms of the house. Tae-san diligently washed the dishes after the guests left. While washing the dishes, Tae-san was a little angry that they had never tasted anything on the table. When he had finished washing the dishes, he went to his room. Tae-san lay down on his bed and finally relaxed a bit. Lying on the bed, he turned his head toward the picture frame. There was some kind of family photo in the picture frame. It was a picture of him, his wife, and his baby having fun together. How else are you going to live like this? The woman said. Did you ever even think about our daughter's future? Tae-san's wife asked. Have you ever thought about our daughter's future? Tae-san's wife asked. I don't want our daughter to live in a world of crime, she cried. The woman gathered her belongings, and together with her daughter left Tae-san's house. Tae-san was very angry at this point. He stood at the panoramic window and remembered these moments. These memories made him very upset. There are so many different advertising banners on the house. The office where the office workers work hard. Well, some man came out of the next room with a towel on his head. It was a private detective named Shin Youngmo. After answering the phone, he became very nervous. Someone examining the photo of the child and the woman in the vegetable garden in detail. Bangkwa in North Gyeongsang? The man with the pictures in his hands asked. Yes, replied the second man. It was Tae-san, looking at the pictures, most likely looking for his wife. After confirming the information, Tae-san threw a stack of money on the table. I doubled the amount you asked for information. Tae-san said. I take it back, and you know what it means to you. Of course I do. Keep your mouth shut. The male detective replied nervously. Come back anytime, sir, the detective said and bowed. Tae-san walked out and slammed the door behind him. Detective Jummo exhaled with relief. His legs were shaking just because he was sitting across from Korea's legendary fist. But he doesn't understand why Tae-san asked him to be the one to do the job. Jummo remarked that it was probably something personal to him. Holding his foot up, Jummo realized something. He realized that he shouldn't think about it, lest he get into it. If I find out too much, he'll wipe me out, Jummo thought to himself. Waving his hands, he wanted to forget all about it. It was an ordinary day on the Korean highway. But someone alone was hurtling along at high speed. There were cameras on some stretches of the road. They didn't time them if someone was driving fast. This person didn't care about the cameras. And he kept going without slowing down. One of the drivers says that he's probably loaded with money, since he can afford it. Tae-san was sitting in that car. He was going somewhere. His face was as serious as can be, he was angry. He was angry at the woman he saw in the picture. It was his wife, and she had left him for such a life. He was angry and at the same time didn't understand why she did what she did. The usual Korean parking lot outside the store. Sitting in his car, Tae-san still didn't understand why she did that. And if he asked her, she wasn't someone who would just go back to him. She's turning 7 this year, Tae-san thought, remembering his daughter. He is well aware that he doesn't need them to come back that much. He just wants to see his daughter grow up, even if it lasts a second. At this point, Keel-san calls him on the phone. Picking up the phone, Tae-san answered his friend's call. He asked where Tae-san was now. And Tae-san answered that he was not in Seoul right now. Keel-san said that some old man wants to see him very much. Therefore, he needs to go back. Then some outside shouting started coming from the phone. Keel-san said that he did not know what the old man wanted from them, he just wanted to talk to Tae-san. What is that old snake up to, thought Tae-san. Even outside it was heard that Tae-san had agreed to come. And he asked where it was. The moon was shining very brightly tonight. It brightly illuminated that unfinished building where Tae-san had been asked to come. Tae-san arrived at the rendezvous point in his car just in time. Once outside, he slammed the door of his car. He looked suspiciously at the hangar he saw ahead of him. He realized that the old man loved all this dark stuff and hangars in the evenings. Nervously, he stuck his right hand in his pocket. From his pocket he pulled out the very 2 black balls. Shuffling the marbles in his hand, Tae-san headed for the hangar. He opened the big iron door with his hands. Tae-san noticed someone waiting for him at the entrance. He began to move closer to the silhouette, thinking it was Keel-san. As he got closer he could see that it was a completely different person. Who are you? Tae-san asked tensely. And at that moment he heard some sounds from behind him. The doors he had just recently opened immediately closed. The man with the scar on his face scratched his nose, and started giggling as he looked at Tae-san. Suddenly the lights went on everywhere for Tae-san, and he closed his arms. A crowd of 50 people surrounded him on all sides, and he didn't know what to do now. They certainly hadn't come just to say hello. Man said that he would like to tell him how it all happened, but he would wait until he and Keel-san met in hell. Tae-san realized that Keel-san had most likely been dead for a long time. And if you're looking for an old man, that's me, the man said smiling. I have come to see with my own eyes how the great fist of Korea is put into a coffin. And after these words Tae-san was attacked from behind by minions. One he immediately struck with a lightning-quick fist to the chin. And then began to fight off the others with his bare hands against the clubs with nails. He hit them so hard it felt like their skin was shifting. He beat them to their last breath until every one of them was on the ground bruised. No matter how many he beat, they attacked more and more and more. It felt like they were cloned. And then the final blow was struck. And the henchman's baton flew through the air. Having dealt with all the minions, Tae-san landed calmly on the ground. The scarred man was surprised that one man could beat the whole crowd with his own hands. Tae-san caught that baton of nails that was in the air. Taking off his jacket, Tae-san began to tell something to those who were still on their feet. And there weren't as many of them as at first. He said they were crazy if they attacked him knowing who he was. And especially you. Pointing his baton at the scarred man, Tae-san said. Tae-san said he would avenge Keel-san by breaking the bones of everyone here. And now the scarred man was a little frightened. But then Tae-san felt something strange. It was a dart in his leg, and most likely it had poison in it. He saw the dart and now understood what made him feel so sick, and his body felt as if it were numb. Looking at the liquid inside the dart, Tae-san began to speculate what it might be. At the same second his mind began to cloud over. And then, little by little, his vision began to disappear. In front of the powerless Tae-san stood a satisfied crowd, and a man with a rifle in his hands. The man with the scar said he was sad now. Laughing, he says he expected a very different fight with Korea's best fist. While Tae-san was in pain, the man continued to tell him about the dart. He says it's an elephant tranquilizer, so he won't be able to resist it. Holding the baton, Tae-san tried not to faint. But the tranquilizer had already spread almost completely over his body. "Attack him, boys!" With a satisfied grin ordered the man with the scar. And at the same second Tae-san was attacked by a mob of henchmen who wanted to beat him up as much as possible. The sounds of the blows could be heard all around the shop. They beat him with their truncheons, with true cruelty, and did not stop. While the whole crowd was beating poor Tae-san, the man with the scar only stood by and watched. When he had had enough, he turned around and walked toward the exit. The guy who was standing beside him asked if he wanted to watch him take his last breath. "I'm as sick in the head as you guys are," the man said, and the henchman bowed to him. After the bow, the lip-smacking fellow turned in the direction of the slaughterhouse. He asked that they not hit him so hard. "Were you listening? I told you not to hit him in the face and his organs," shouted the lip guy. One of the henchmen said they were only trying to hit him in the bones. Lip guy started rubbing Tae-san's body in the area of his ribs, which made everyone feel sick. He ordered the henchman to bring him a scalpel and a box of ice. A few seconds later, the henchman brought him 2 black cases. One of the henchmen warned that Tae-san is still alive, so it's worth waiting a bit. But the angry lip guy said that if they can't watch that, then let them get out of here. Taking out his scalpel, he said he didn't want any of the organs to get ruined. He started humming some music, and cut the body with the scalpel. The others who saw it began to vomit. The lip guy turned his attention to Tae-san's eye. Smiling, he said it would be a shame if he let it all go to waste. Little by little he began to squeeze out Tae-san's eye. And still alive Tae-san, looking at the lip-locked fellow, thought about how he couldn't die here. Slowly he began to pass out, and promised himself that he would definitely come back. He'll be back, one way or another.